but that they would certainly prevent their escaping before the Mandarin fleet arrived. On the 20th of November, early in the morning, I perceived an immense fleet of Mandarin vessels standing for the bay. On nearing us they formed a line, and stood close in, each vessel, as she discharged her guns, tacked to join the rear and reload. They kept up a constant fire for about 2 hours, when one of their largest vessels was blown up by a firebrand thrown from a Ladrone junk, after which they kept at a more respectful distance, but continued firing without intermission till the 21st at night, when it fell calm. The Ladrones towed out 7 large vessels, with about 200 rowboats to board them, but a breeze springing up, they made sail and escaped. The Ladrones returned into the bay and anchored. The Portuguese and Mandarines followed, and continued a heavy cannonading during that night and the next day. The vessel I was in had her foremast shot away, which they supplied very expeditiously by taking a mainmast from a smaller vessel. On the 23rd in the evening it again fell calm. The Ladrones towed out 15 junks in 2 divisions, with the intention of surrounding them, which was nearly effected, having come up with and boarded one, when a breeze suddenly sprung up. The captured vessel mounted 22 guns. Most of her crew leaped overboard. 60 or 70 were taken immediately, cut to pieces and thrown into the river. Early in the morning the Ladrones returned into the bay, and anchored in the same situation as before. The Portuguese and Mandarines followed, keeping up a constant fire. The Ladrones never returned a single shot, but always kept in readiness to board, and the Portuguese were careful never to allow them an opportunity. On the 28th at night they sent in 8 fire vessels, which if properly constructed must have done great execution, having every advantage they could wish for to effect their purpose. A strong breeze and tide directly into the bay, and the vessels lying so close together that it was impossible to miss them. On their first appearance the Ladrones gave a general shout, supposing them to be Mandarin vessels on fire, but were very soon convinced of their mistake. They came very regularly into the centre of the fleet, 2 and 2, burning furiously. One of them came alongside of the vessel I was in, but they succeeded in booming her off. She appeared to be a vessel of about 30 tons. Her hold was filled with straw and wood, and there were a few small boxes of combustibles on her deck, which exploded alongside of us without doing any damage. The Ladrones, however, towed them all on shore, extinguished the fire, and broke them up for firewood. The Portuguese claimed the credit of constructing these destructive machines, and actually sent a dispatch to the governor of Macao, saying they had destroyed at least 1/3 of the Ladrones' fleet, and hoped soon to effect their purpose by totally annihilating them. On the 29th of November, the Ladrones being all ready for sea, they weighed and stood boldly out, bidding defiance to the invincible squadron and imperial fleet, consisting of 93 war junks, 6 Portuguese ships, a brig and a schooner. Immediately the Ladrones weighed, they made all sail. The Ladrones chased them 2 or 3 hours, keeping up a constant fire. Finding they did not come up with them, they hauled their wind and stood to the eastward. Thus terminated the boasted blockade, which lasted 9 days, during which time the Ladrones completed all their repairs. In this action not a single Ladrone vessel was destroyed, and their loss about 30 or 40 men. An American was also killed, one of 3 that remained out of 8 taken in a schooner. I had 2 very narrow escapes. The first, a 12-pounder shot fell within 3 or 4 feet of me. Another took a piece out of a small brass swivel on which I was standing. The chief's wife frequently sprinkled me with garlic water, which they consider an effectual charm against shot. The fleet continued under sail all night, steering towards the eastward. In the morning they anchored in a large bay surrounded by lofty and barren mountains. On the 2nd of December I received a letter from Lieutenant Morgan, commander of the Honourable Company's cruiser Antelope, saying that he had the ransom on board, and had been 3 days cruising after us, and wished me to settle with the chief on the securest method of delivering it. The chief agreed to send us in a small gunboat, till we came within sight of the Antelope. Then the Compradore's boat was to bring the ransom and receive us. I was so agitated at receiving this joyful news, that it was with considerable difficulty I could scrawl about 2 or 3 lines to inform Lieutenant Morgan of the arrangements I had made. We were all so deeply affected by the gratifying tidings that we seldom closed our eyes, but continued watching day and night for the boat. On the 6th she returned with Lieutenant Morgan's answer, saying he would respect any single boat, but would not allow the fleet to approach him. The chief then, according to his first proposal, ordered a gunboat to take us, and with no small degree of pleasure we left the Ladrone fleet about 4 o'clock in the morning. At 1 p.m. saw the Antelope under all sail, standing toward us. The Ladrone boat immediately anchored, and dispatched the Compradore's boat for the ransom, saying that if she approached nearer, they would return to the fleet, and they were just weighing when she shortened sail, and anchored about 2 miles from us. The boat did not reach her till late in the afternoon, owing to the tides being strong against her. She received the ransom, and left the Antelope just before dark. A mandarine boat that had been lying concealed under the land, and watching their manoeuvres, gave chase to her, and was within a few fathoms of taking her, when she saw a light, which the Ladrones answered, and the mandarine hauled off. Our situation was now a most critical one. The ransom was in the hands of the Ladrones, and the Compradore dare not return with us for fear of a second attack from the mandarine boat. The Ladrones would not remain till morning, so we were obliged to return with them to the fleet. In the morning the chief inspected the ransom, which consisted of the following articles: 2 bales of superfine scarlet cloth, 2 chests of opium, 2 casks of gunpowder, and a telescope, the rest in dollars. He objected to the telescope not being new, and said he should detain one of us till another was sent, or $100 in lieu of it. The Compradore, however, agreed with him for the $100. Everything being at length settled, the chief ordered 2 gunboats to convey us near the Antelope. We saw her just before dusk, when the Ladrone boats left us. We had the inexpressible pleasure of arriving on board the Antelope at 7 p.m., where we were most cordially received, and heartily congratulated on our safe and happy deliverance from a miserable captivity, which we had endured for 11 weeks and 3 days. A few remarks on the origin, progress, manners, and customs of the Ladrones. The Ladrones are a disaffected race of Chinese that revolted against the oppressions of the mandarins. They first commenced their depredations on the western coast, Cochin China, by attacking small trading vessels in rowboats, carrying from 30 to 40 men each. They continued this system of piracy several years. At length their successes and the oppressive state of the Chinese had the effect of rapidly increasing their numbers. Hundreds of fishermen and others flocked to their standard, and as their number increased, they consequently became more desperate. They blockaded all the principal rivers, and captured several large junks, mounting from 10 to 15 guns each. With these junks they formed a very formidable fleet, and no small vessels could trade on the coast with safety. They plundered several small villages, and exercised such wanton barbarity as struck horror into the hearts of the Chinese. To check these enormities, the government equipped a fleet of 40 imperial war junks, mounting from 18 to 20 guns each. On the very first rencontre, 28 of the imperial junks struck to the pirates. The rest saved themselves by a precipitate retreat. These junks, fully equipped for war, were a great acquisition to them. Their numbers augmented so rapidly that at the period of my captivity they were supposed to amount to near 70,000 men, 800 large vessels, and nearly 1,000 small ones, including rowboats. They were divided into 5 squadrons, distinguished by different coloured flags, each squadron commanded by an admiral or chief, but all under the orders of Juo Che, Qing Yi Sao, their premier chief, a most daring and enterprising man, who went so far as to declare his intention of displacing the present Tartar family from the throne of China, and to restore the ancient Chinese dynasty. This extraordinary character would have certainly shaken the foundation of the government, had he not been thwarted by the jealousy of the second in command, who declared his independence, and soon after surrendered to the mandarines with 500 vessels, on promise of a pardon. Most of the inferior chiefs followed his example. Juo Che, Qing Yi Sao, held out a few months longer, and at length surrendered with 16,000 men, on condition of a general pardon, and himself to be made a mandarin of distinction. The Ladrones have no settled residence on shore, but live constantly in their vessels. The after part is appropriated to the captain and his wives. He generally has 5 or 6. With respect to conjugal rights, they are religiously strict. No person is allowed to have a woman on board unless married to her according